I'm Maurice McDavid, host of Black, Brown, and Bilingue, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another great episode of My EdTech Life. I am excited to be here with you on this wonderful Tuesday evening, or it may be well into Wednesday, depending on where you are in the world. I simply want to say thank you so much for joining us and making us part of your day. And as always, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for all the likes, shares, the follows, the comments. As you know, we're celebrating our 200th episode a couple of weeks ago. Now we're at episode 202, and we're just continuing on bringing you some amazing conversations with amazing guests. And as you know, my job here and my purpose and my mission is to simply connect educators and creators one show at a time. And I am excited for today's show. Today we have an amazing guest with some amazing experience in the topic that we're going to be talking about this evening. And that topic is going to be envisioning and shaping tomorrow's world. And we'll be talking about generative AI. We're going to be talking a little bit about metaverse and just things to consider as far as the future of education and the future of work. So I would love to welcome to the show tonight, Lori Mazer. Lori, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great this evening. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful. Thank you so much again. I know we talked, pre-chat and just kind of warming up, and it's just been a great conversation in the pre-chat. And again, thank you so much for being a guest on our show, and of course, sharing your experience and your work with our audience. So, before we dive in and we get into the heart of the conversation, Lori, just to inform you that everybody that is a guest on my EdTech Life, I always say I liken them to a superhero because it's somebody that I have seen their work. I admire what they're doing. It's very informative to me, and it has helped me continue my own personal journey or personal learning journey, that is, too, as well. And so, as we know, every superhero has an origin story. So, Lori, I would love for you to give us a little brief introduction, and if you can just delight us with your origin story as far as, your education background and then coming up and then, of course, being part or diving in into the world of generative AI and the metaverse.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my origin story definitely starts with education. My mother is a teacher and a school librarian. And so, we were raised to believe that education is really important. I went to college like many people did. I had a wonderful undergraduate experience. I then went on to graduate school. I went into the workforce and then I went back to school and I keep going back to school. I'm definitely someone who believes in lifelong learning. I consider myself kind of halfway through my journey. I turned 50 this year, which I take as a proud milestone, and I'm like shooting to 100. So I don't know, maybe like two or three more degrees or, 100 micro credentials in the rest of my lifetime ahead.
Excellent. No, and you know what? It's great that you said that because I can definitely relate to you. I am in the similar situation where, I at first, when I fell into teaching, I was like, well, man, this is what I want to do. I love it, and I want to be in the classroom. But then there was an opportunity for growth and then, pursued a master's degree and then currently working on a doctorate degree. But between all of that, I'm always on LinkedIn Learning. I'm trying to find other ways and micro credentials. And, it's just the whole process of learning something new is just definitely something that is exciting. So I can definitely relate with you on that for sure. So, Lori, as far as the education experience that you told us a little bit about, I would love to know how it is that you got involved into your current body of work that you're doing. I know I shared your website right now. It's Synthetivity.
Mhm.
And so you do offer here where you talk about some workshops, you talk about design, imagine, and of course, giving some people a brief, intro to your speaking, what you do offer. But Tell me a little bit about that journey. How did you really just find that passion for metaverse, for generative AI?
Yeah. So I was trained as an architect, and when you get a design education, it really is like an education about range and being a polymath. When you're designing spaces, you're talking with all different kinds of people and trying to meet their needs through physical space. And so, this is what I've been doing. I've been running university operations, and kind of naturally that began expanding into technology. And so technology has just become like part and parcel of pretty much everything that we do. So I never had a technology expertise or training. It's just something I kind of picked up and really enjoyed. And I've always considered myself to be a futurist, in part because as we're building buildings, like we're building buildings for 100 years from now. And so, we're always talking to people about how they imagine the future, how they want to get there, and kind of charting a path forward. So this is just kind of my DNA. And, like many people, I went through the pandemic and was really exhausted. I was grateful to have a job, and I was working at the City University of New York at Hunter College and managing building operations and public safety and environmental health and safety, which kind of became right front and center. And when April 2022 came around, I needed a break. And so I kind of took a lesson I learned from faculty, and I was like, you know what? I think I need a sabbatical. It's been a few 7-year cycles here. I think I'm like ready to just take time off and get some perspective. So I did that, and it just happened to coincide with when generative AI, was becoming popularized. And so I was like playing around. I mean, I honestly had no idea that this was going to be my career. If you asked me a year ago what I was going to be doing, I really thought I was going to be helping universities plan the future of their campuses. And I'm still working on that. But I took a hard pivot. As soon as I realized that like AI was really going to be the gateway to the metaverse, and the metaverse, I think, is going to be a big part of the future of education.
Excellent.
So yeah, I literally started playing around with Midjourney, and this turned into a career 9 months later.
That is amazing. So then Midjourney just was kind of like your gateway into, once you started
Yeah,
experimenting that.
yeah.
Wow.
No, I
So
was
tell
good.
me.
Way is a really good. It's a drug. It really is. Like once you're on it, like it's hard to get off.
Yeah, excellent. So just tell me a little bit more about that. I'm just curious, because, very much like yourself, I love to just dive in and just really immerse myself into some new tech. So, you told us about your pivot and then, of course, your experience with Midjourney. And then, of course, that opens up to just way more that is out there. So, uh, what was that? I guess just that feeling like, I know you mentioned this is going to be kind of the future there. And in some way, like you said, you are still doing the work and helping institutions, but now it's because you're informing them of, new tech that's coming out, the generative AI and the metaverse. But I'm just curious, like, that moment that you said, this is it. I found what I'm going to do. What was that feeling like when you just said, I'm diving in?
Yeah, no, it was, I was playing, right? And everybody who was giving me career advice was like, figure out what your why is. And then, and I was doing like honestly like worksheets where I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I'm like, this is nothing is feeling right about this. Like, I don't know what my why is. And honestly, like, you can't build a business around your why, because it really is about what do other people need from you that you can give easily that's of value to them, right? So I think I kind of switched my head a little bit and, got away from thinking about, what do I want with my career? And, I was like in this space of helping universities think about the future, but to be honest, the market wasn't there. And the kind of work that I was doing 5 years ago, where I would be invited into a university or a hospital and we'd be thinking about things 10 years, 25 years. I think everybody was in a crisis point. And, right now it was like, how do we figure out how to get ourselves back on campus? How do we figure out how to pick up students who might have been left behind? How do we figure out how to make ends meet with our budgets? And, you're watching one university after another kind of fall because even those who had, really tried to plan ahead, the unexpected, it really caught up with folks. So I was like, all right, no one wants to talk about the future. They want to talk about the present. And the present became AI very fast. Right. And so, basically I was playing with Midjourney in like let's say September 2022. Right. I was posting every week my Midjourney art and literally just doing it for fun. And maybe if like my mother and a few people liked it, I was like, "Oh, that's nice." But people kept encouraging me to do that and I kept putting more stuff out there. So by the time ChatGPT comes out, I'd already learned how to talk to a computer. Right? And I learned a lot of kind of tricks, and that's why I say it's like it is a gateway because once you learn one system, kind of like transferring that knowledge to others is really easy. When I teach, I often talk about it as like learning an instrument, right? Like you learn 12 notes, and actually in prompting 12 words in Mid Journey is kind of like the magic number. And so yeah, so I learned about how you have a conversation with a computer. How do you give up control? Which is, this is not software. This is a communication system. And so, for people who like to control the outcome, this is not what generative AI does. And in fact, it does the very opposite. It introduces into our lives chaos and cacophony and the unexpected, right? And so, how do you harness that and use it for good? So, this is kind of like what got me going. And then, really, the light bulb moment was when I saw an ad right before the holidays for an instructor for the Ed3 DAO. They wanted someone to teach a boot camp. And I was like, I think I can do that. Like, but I have never taught really. I've like, gone and done guest lectures, but I've never been in a classroom. And they hired me to the boot camp and I put together the curriculum with a wonderful, wonderful organization. And then I was like, wonder if executives would want to learn this. So I put out a call to my women's network, and like 300 people wanted to learn AI. And I'm like, okay, I think that's what people need. And so, like, all right, I think this is what I'm building a business around. Um, and, that was like February.
That is amazing, Lori. And, there's so much stuff there to unpack. And, because just like you said, it is really a gateway, a lot of similarities. There's so many platforms that are out there. And of course, the countless number of platforms that
Mhm.
came out, from December on. And, we're seeing a lot of great tools. I've, been able to play around with a lot of wonderful tools for the K-12 space that can easily be used in the higher ed space as well that are strictly and they keep everything, strictly educational. Then of course you've got the Chat GPT tools, you've got Midjourney, Dolly, you've got so many others. And then of course now we're talking about like, nerfs as well, those
Yep.
amazing videos and everything. And so it's like I don't know how to keep track is it's like I want to put my toes and feet into everything, but
Yeah.
it's just an exciting time for me. One thing that I do want to kind of highlight actually is the way that you said, when you're teaching people, you liken it to an instrument. And that is very much what I tell everybody at the school district that I work for. And my mission is always to tell them, like, when you work on a platform, it's like an instrument. It's going to be confusing at first because you don't know the notes, but once you know a couple of notes, you play some great melodies. And the only reason I give them also that example is because oftentimes we want to jump from tool to tool because of the next shiny thing. And I say,
Mhm.
sometimes with an instrument, it takes a lot of time. But once you really dive in deep, you get to play some great tunes and then maybe realize, like, hey, there's a lot more to this platform than I thought that I don't really have to jump to another, but just so they can really dive in. So I really like that you
Yeah.
mentioned that. That's so important.
You're making me think actually, and I think there's like that analogy we can kind of play out a little more because I think there's two ways of learning an instrument, right? One is like you're reading sheet music,
Mm.
right? And then the other one is jazz, like you're improvising. And I get overwhelmed, to be honest. And I am like probably just as overwhelmed as everybody else. Like I have a list of tools that I want to try, right? And I don't even have enough time to get to them to try all of them. And I try and dedicate, because this is my job, I try and dedicate time to do that. But the prompt engineering and the like number of prompt recipes that are out there is like overwhelming to me, and I can't process that. So I kind of teach a more improvisational technique, which is like, let's learn the basic chords. And once you know that, you can like make any kind of music. And so like I have a really simple prompt structure that's like, who do you want to be today? What do you want to get done? How do you want to do it? And yes, you can kind of like put some context in there, but yeah, I mean, just like really thinking of it in a basic way so it's approachable for people.
I love it. Yeah, just keeping it simple. You're absolutely right. But I do agree, also just the improvisational part. And, that's one of my things too, being able to play with these tools and seeing how I can use it, obviously, for, my professional work. But not only that, but for this, as far as the podcasting, the social media, and things of that sort, it
Yeah.
has really helped just relieve so much of my time as far as now I get some of that time back, because of all of these tools. And a lot of times it's just very improvisational because it's like I'm one of those, like, if I'm feeling this today, then this is what I'm going to roll with. Or if I'm feeling this is what I'm going to roll with. And
Yep.
just having some fun and being excited about it. So that's wonderful. That's love it. Great
Yeah.
job. So now I want to ask you, with this, you mentioned the DAO, of course,
Yeah.
yeah, and they're amazing. I'm actually part of that group too as well, and of course the tech rabbi and Breedy and
Yeah.
Michael and Dagan and they're amazing, amazing people, and they're also doing some amazing work. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about that too as well, and along with AI. So how can using AI and the tools that are out there and, knowing about the metaverse, how can we use or how could that help bridge the gap between some of the traditional classroom settings that we have, but also the evolving needs for, the future of learning and the future of work?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about it in two buckets, because I think that there is one use of the technology, which is really about how can you use it to improve your own life and productivity. And when I mean productivity, I don't mean like how can you eke more out of yourself. But how can you, like, outsource a part of your brain to something else, so that you can relieve yourself of some of the burdens that you have? And I think it's with everybody. When I just got off a webinar with a group of marketing folks, and, I start every day with ChatGPT on one screen and Midjourney on the other. And with ChatGPT, what I do is I start and I say, "Okay, good morning." I always talk to AI, even though I know it's zeros and ones. I always talk to it like I'm talking to a human, because, God forbid one of these days there actually is somebody on the other side of that. I want to always speak with respect. So I'm gonna say please and thank you, and I'm always gonna say good morning. So good morning. It's 9 a.m. on a Monday, and I am. How am I feeling? Right? I'm excited, I'm nervous, I'm like, right, what is my state of mind? What's on my calendar? And what other stuff do I have to fit into my day? And I just kind of like keep that chat going all day long. And it is like the best personal assistant ever. And I would say for teachers, like, this is your primary toolkit, because what teacher gets a personal assistant? Nobody, right? Like you are there alone in the classroom. Like every once in a while, you'll have some student teacher or like little bit of support, but pretty much like you're on your own. And I think that to me is such a valuable tool and companion. And I think the second thing in terms of like how do you now deliver to your students is, the classrooms that we are teaching to are so wide. And we want to have people of all different learning abilities and all different ranges and all different learning styles. But one teacher for 30 students, each of whom learns differently, really hard. So I think the next level is how do we personalize learning in the classroom for individual students? And like there are some really nifty integrations. The like Google Docs and Google Sheets integration of GPT is next level. And you can like literally come up with personalized learning plans for each one of your students on a daily basis with one click.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. And that's so important because I had a couple of people on, we had Adic Bear from CurryPod, which is a great tool that a lot of elementary, or even K-12 space people are using. We had Thomas Thompson from EduAid that are creating these tools. And honestly, they did such a great job too that it does feel like that personal assistant and, or co-pilot. And you're absolutely right. I mean, in today's world with the technology that we have, in order to combat some of that burnout, some of that, just maybe anxieties and just like just tiredness because you've got a whole day planned. I mean, as a teacher, you have to be on like right away to make it through the day. But with tools like this, such as the Chat GPT integration with Google Docs and Sheets that you're talking about, I agree with you. Having that co-pilot and that can help you do the personalization. So important and so wonderful because you're able, as a teacher, one of the things that I loved, and that's because we didn't have this technology yet, but just having a Chromebook, I can improvise, I can adapt my lesson for my students specifically. Maybe on a Chromebook, when I had a student that was maybe they didn't want to speak due to being an emergent bilingual, they were self conscious. I would just say, well, here's a Chromebook, let me show you a little bit of Google Slides. And they were able to speak loudly and clearly through the slide without them having to just feel overwhelmed that they have to go and talk, But now with the tools that we have available, I mean, it just, you're able to, just really, really reach all of your students in some way, shape, or form. And that's the one thing that I love about education and hoping a lot more districts really do see the advantage of this tech and that it doesn't have to be overwhelming because I know before teachers never thought about it. And for years, they would take the students to the computers. Here you go. The computer creates a little learning pathway for them based on the learning. So the algorithms would say, oh, they need a little bit more support here. Let's put the
Mhm.
student here or there and those pathways. But it was just so interesting. December comes and now that technology is front facing and the
Yeah.
teachers are seeing that and it just caused, just a lot of anxiety, a lot of nervousness, a lot of chaos per se. So
Yeah. I mean, I think ed tech has been that. And, as I was in higher education implementing new tools, right? And a lot of times people would just stick with the same thing because they didn't want to learn something new. Right? Because once you've learned it, like, you know exactly where it is. In fact, we redid the website and, buttons that people used to recognize in a certain place weren't there anymore. And it's like very disruptive. So I think with this, it's a little different because this isn't software. Right? There's like really not that much to learn. I can pretty much teach anybody in 2 hours how to like get started with AI and feel comfortable and adept. And so it's really about what do you need, right? What do you need today and how do you find it? So it's more, I think, about moving towards problem based learning for everybody, right? Both the teacher and the student, and really following a line of inquiry.
excellent. So now, Lori, with your experience, one of the things that I want to ask you because you do work with higher ed as well, but I think this could be easily relatable, even in the K-12 space. But how do you see the role of technology, changing the landscape, and what are some of the challenges in your experience that maybe you're currently seeing, and what have been maybe some things that you've seen also in your experience being around, many institutions of ways that they may be overcoming some of these challenges with the new tech?
Yeah. Look, I think that this is for the first time in a very long time, a technology that really is for everybody, not for the young people as early adopters. Right? So, I have a 15-year-old, like, she's not on ChatGPT. I'm sure maybe there are some people who are, but, like, this is a technology that's for us, right? That's for those of us who are seasoned, and so I think that's one of the things I'm seeing is that, we just have a major disruptive technology that's kind of, like, hitting people at, I'll call it an executive level, like, probably not since Microsoft Word. Um, I think the second thing that I'm seeing is that this is not technology where IT folks are the experts. In fact, they've been taken just as much by storm as everybody else. And as the ed tech market is being massively disrupted. And, so I think here, what I'm seeing is kind of a return of the humanities, a return of the importance of understanding history, understanding logic, right? I almost think the math proof is like the way we're gonna come to understand and assess the students in the future, right? Which is it's not just about how you get the answer, it's about how you arrive at the answer and your logic and your structure to getting there. So, yeah, I think this is very much a humanities based and kind of communication. These are language tools. And so I think those are the folks that it's gonna privilege, and that will be a shift.
Excellent. I definitely see that, and like what you're saying. And, it's interesting. One thing that you mentioned is more of the technology director, CTO positions. They're also at this point in time not the experts. Whereas before, one thing that you highlighted was oftentimes we tend to do things the way they've always been done. We're in our comfort zone, and then of course, when something new comes, it's like, whoa, kind of get out of our comfort zone. But it seemed like because of this technology, everybody started at par. Like, we're all at the same level. Much I think like I have a friend, Josh Tovar, who's a principal. He also said, once, the schools shut down and then everybody kind of came back, it's like, hey, we're kind of like at par now. We're starting all over again. So it
Yeah.
just all depends on, like you said, what approach do you take? Obviously we're going to see those challenges, and there are going to be ways to overcome those things. And of course, with the disruption of technology, we know that new ideas come about and new practices come about, and it's not all bad at all whatsoever. Like, but you
Yeah.
also have to think a little bit about, there are some, things that, may be a risk, but with anything, you have to find ways to kind of mitigate those risks to continue in the learning process.
Yeah, well, and I do love analogies. So when you said par, I just kept thinking about the golf handicap, right? And the fact that like players of all different skill levels can play on the same golf course and have an equal experience. And wouldn't it be wonderful if education were like that, right? If basically we could allow AI to kind of like fill in the gap between where someone's at and where we want them to be. And who cares, right? I mean, this is my perspective. Like, I don't really care who wrote the essay as long as the essay that's produced is awesome. And, I think that that's probably controversial, and I'm probably gonna, like, make people nervous with that, but I really think that, like, right now, I call it kind of fantastic banality. Like, if you just type in a prompt to GPT chat, you get something that, like, is pretty easy to tell that it was written by an AI. But if you actually engage with it in a conversation and you put your own ideas into it and you start to put in your own personal experiences and stories. And, you start to craft a narrative back and forth. By the time you get to the end, like you own it, it's yours. And you can't tell whether that was written by AI or whether that was written by a human. And I love the idea of AI as just like the handicap tool that allows everybody to level up. And, I'm just kind of done with this world where we've got, one system for people of privilege and we have another system for people who've been disadvantaged. And, I think the big mistake we will make with AI is if we allow it to exacerbate. those distinctions.
No, well said. One of the things that you mentioned too is just the writing process. And obviously, we know, a lot of universities, that was the big scare because a lot of their assessment is on writing. And, so this semester, in my doctoral course, really they didn't have a guideline. They just said, look, we read something and we may have some questions. Where have a meeting and we'll talk. And really, it was just to kind of see like, was this your idea? Was this just completely just generated, and just submitted? And so then we also have a discussion board, and on that board, all the questions were like, well, what if AI this? What can we change? What can we do? And for myself, just my responses based on my experience, even with my kids, not as a fifth grade teacher without any of this technology, but just with Chromebooks, it's like I never liked to give, just an assessment every Friday. It was more of that project. And that project was your assessment because I can tell and fix any misconceptions. And I can tell if you really did learn ba- based what was on the little rubric, but then I can say, oh, I think they just put something together too as well. And like I mentioned to you, the one student that just spoke loudly through her slides, she wasn't able to feel comfortable verbalizing the content, but man, those slides, she demonstrated mastery of that science concept that we were going over or social studies concept. So I think the idea of maybe even changing the assessment. I know one of the things too that I've been challenging for a while since I even started the doctoral program. I was like, why do we still have to write 160-page dissertations? Like, why can't we do a different way of showing the assessment, presenting your research, perhaps either through a podcast? You're still going to have to do the research. You're
Yeah.
still going to verbalize your findings. But I was like, could it be a podcast? Could it be, just some kind of just a slide or just something that just gives the idea of
Yeah.
what you did, your body of work, and some people say, "Hey, all right," because the future I think of work is really this. It's like if a student can go out and turn on their cell phone, some kind of media, create a video and put it out there and you're sharing that knowledge, that's really where we're at.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
those are just my thoughts there.
That's a very good food for thought.
Yeah. So, and then in line with that, I wanted to ask you just to continue maybe in this line because a lot of what I saw was it, and this is again, we barely had Chromebooks. It was the very first time. This was way, way before pandemic. I think it was like 2016 or 17 when we had our first little Chromebook card. And I noticed how it really fostered that creativity, the collaboration, and just the redefinition and modification of their assignments where they're able to add and layer extra things that they once couldn't because everything was on paper.
Yeah.
So, what role, I mean, or how do you see also with generative AI and the metaverse being able to do this for all people, K through 12 and higher ed? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think my first thought when you said that and when you were talking about Chromebook was really the transition we've made from individual activities to group activities, right? I think that was the major change that Google introduced was that multiple people can be working on a document simultaneously. And by the time I got to graduate school in business, like that's the world that we were in. And everything you do in business school is in teams, right? So if you like to be an individual contributor, business school is not for you. Like you really have to embrace a collaborative process. And I think that's one of the things that we will start to see more of with AI. And one of the reasons why I actually really enjoy Midjourney, and the way that I teach in Discord, where everyone can see what everybody else is generating. And so it's very similar to the way that I learned architecture, which is everybody is working on an individual project, but we're all sitting in the same room. Like in my day, like you had to go to studio and you pretty much like lived there until, 2, 4 o'clock in the morning. And then you got a little bit of sleep. And then you like showed up at your 9 a.m. class, like with a cup of coffee and you were just like so exhausted.
Yeah.
But that was the life. And when you're in studio, like it's so collaborative. Even if you're doing your own work, you're like seeing what everybody else is doing, you're critiquing each other. Right. And so it's like being alone together. And I think AI right now is also like that. I'm kind of disappointed that ChatGPT is not as collaborative in that way. It seems to me like a missed moment. I did integrate the GPT bot into my Discord channel so that I could at least like teach it in a group setting. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a cool opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. So, Lori, as we're kind of getting ready to wrap up, I have maybe about two more questions because I definitely just want to ask this last question. And then, of course, I want you to actually share with us, your work, what I'm sorry, I butchered that. I was doing so well before, but
Yeah.
sensitivity, that way you can tell us a little bit about that too. But before we get into that, just on some closing thoughts on this, what would be through the experience that you've had and the countless number of people that you've been able to meet and teach and share your experiences with, maybe what would be some advice that you would give to educators, to administrators, to incorporate AI technology into their institutions, and how can they best prepare for those opportunities?
Yeah. So I think like first and foremost, like you mentioned being a superhero and like I'm like that superhero that shows up and their like outfit is torn and they're constantly like tripping over themselves. And I think that's actually the best kind of superhero to have in the classroom is like we are all learning this together. Right? There are no experts in this space. These technologies are like less than a year old. If you go with the like 10,000 hours to be an to be an expert, like nobody's gotten there yet. So I think like don't be afraid to be learning alongside your students. And if that it like we've talked about the flipped classroom, like it is now fully flipped. And so embrace that. I would say the second thing is like what we were talking about with learning an instrument. Just pick one and pick what you think is going to help you the most. If you really want to use text and chat GPT, like use that and try and start to make it your friend, right? But don't get overwhelmed and kind of like tune out a lot of the news and just kind of like focus and learn. Do it in a community if you can find like whether it's your fellow teachers or an online community, but like definitely do it together. Those are my like three hot tips.
Excellent. Well said and great advice. It's fairly simple and very practical. And thank you for sharing that because, like I said, you've been out there, you've been seen, and the fact that you're sharing your learning experience with us too, and just being very open and honest, telling us, hey, we're all in this together. But one of the things that I'm not going to forget this is just to really go at it and just have some fun with it, get creative and get to know it. So that's wonderful. All right. Well, now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and bring your page up here. We're going to share it, but because again, I want people to know what it is, well, first of all, how they can get in contact with you here through the website, but also what it is that you offer through Synthetivity. So here we go. Let me add this here to the stream. And here is your homepage. So tell us a little bit here about what any audience member that's going to visit your website may be able to find.
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll see right here featured workshops. So I do workshops for both individuals and for corporations. I run a boot camp that goes for 4 weeks every Saturday. And then I also do Wednesday workshops, and they're all on my website, and you can sign up for them right on the website. And then I also will do speaking engagements, webinars, 2-hour workshops, 3-hour workshops, like you name it, I deliver it. So I think if you're interested, just find me on LinkedIn or email me. We'll connect and we'll figure out what works for you and for your teams. But I'm just so excited to spread this as wide as possible and reach as many people as I can.
Absolutely. And this is definitely going to be in the show notes. So, for all our audience members that are watching live or are going to catch this on the replay, please make sure that you visit the website and you will find all of Lori's contact information there. So, you yourself too can go ahead and see her offerings and, of course, get some more information on those workshops and, just even speaking engagements as well. So, I highly recommend You've heard her here, you've heard her passion, you've heard just her enthusiasm and just really learning experience that she wants to share with everybody, so make sure you get in contact with her and definitely follow her on LinkedIn. She does share a lot of great stuff and she is definitely involved very heavily in this space. So great person to learn from also as well. So please make sure that you do give her a like, share, and follow as well. All right. Well, Lori, thank you again so much for being an amazing guest. I mean, there's a lot of knowledge nuggets that you definitely shared and just amazing sound bites that I can't wait to edit and put out to continue to share the show and, of course, share your work as well. But before we go, I always love to end the show with the last three questions. And I know I always share those questions with my guests, and they were on the calendar invite. So let's go ahead and get started here. So, question number one, Lori, is in the current state, and we're going to talk about just education, in K 12 higher ed. In the current state of education, what would you say is your current edu kryptonite?
Oh, yeah. So I think I definitely I have a weak spot for bias and intolerance. And so it just like I don't tolerate it in my own life and I don't tolerate it for everybody else in the world. So yeah, not okay. Any of the isms, like not good for me.
Excellent. All right, perfect. Thank you for sharing that. Now, question number two, Lori, is if you could have a billboard with anything on it, what would it be and why?
Slash imagine.
Okay, excellent. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Well, it's the command that you use in Midjourney when you start a prompt. And I kind of love it because I think what we need right now is our imagination. And I encourage everybody to kind of use imagination as a way of like overcoming trauma and moving us into the next part of our world and our history.
I love that. That is very well said. Thank you so much for elaborating on that. That's going to be a really great soundbite. Thank you so much, Lori. And the last question for you now is what is your favorite hobby or pastime outside of your scope of work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do triathlon, and not because I am a good athlete, because I think it's really important with all the work that we do on screens to do something where we connect with our physical body. And so it kind of like pushes me to get outside, enjoy the fresh air, be in community, and keep myself running for the next 50 years.
Excellent. Wow, that is wonderful. Have you competed in that?
Yes, yes, you could call it competing, though I really just compete for myself, but I show up at races and I finish them and I get medals and that makes me feel good.
No, but that's wonderful. Great, great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Lori. Again, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you here as a guest. It's been a great and wonderful conversation. And I know that all our audience members that are going to be checking this out on the replay or checking it out on the podcast are definitely going to benefit from this. And I hope all audience members, please make sure that you do connect with Lori. Make sure that you get on LinkedIn and follow her. Make sure that you visit her website. And of course, all that information will be in the show notes as well. So please make sure that you visit our website at myedtech.life, myedtech.life, where you can check out this amazing episode and the other 201 amazing episodes with amazing educators and creators that you can take some knowledge nuggets from, sprinkle them on to what you are already doing great. And also, if you would love to contribute to our mission here in our podcast of connecting educators and creators, please make sure you stop by our merch store where you can get yourself a nice Maya Tech Life cap, a sweater, a shirt. We know that conference season is around the corner here. We've got summer conference season. Why don't you start preparing for winter as well? And as you know, all of that goes back to our show so we can bring you some amazing conversations like we did tonight. Please make sure also that you follow us on YouTube, follow us on social media at Maya Tech Live. Please make sure that you just give us that like, share, and follow so all of the algorithms can be, or the algorithm can go ahead and put our podcast into your feeds. But as always, my friends, don't forget, until next time, stay stay techie.